Then we have Dada. Now, Dada itself is really a difficult movement to define. There's so much going on. But it is a pretty well-defined movement. Now, they are disgusted by the nationalism that has sped the course to war in 1914. The Dada artists, or the Dadaists, were always opposed to authoritarianism and to any form of group leadership or guiding ideology. Their interests lay primarily in rebelling against what they saw as a cultural snobbery, bourgeoisie convention, and political support for the war. So when we look at German New Objectivity, they're trying to force people to look objectively at the horrors of war. What Dada is doing is it is blaming the society for the war, is saying the war is your fault and we're going to show you how. Now, Dada itself means yes, yes in Slovenic language of Zara, or it was simply grabbed out of a dictionary, or it's a term from French. Either way, it's basically gibberish. It's meant to be gibberish. It's the first, as they see it, the first gibberish that a child speaks. Right after mama, usually there's some other gibberish, and frequently it's something along the lines of Dada. Not that dads don't have an idea, but this is the underlying theory. So, is possibly a colloquial French term for a hobby horse. Yet it also echoes the first words of a child, and these suggestions of childishness and absurdity appeal to the group, who were keen to put distance between themselves and the sobriety of conventional society. It also appeals to them because it might mean the same and nothing in all languages, as the group was avowedly internationalist. So they like the idea that the term Dada can be used in multiple languages because they don't want to tie themselves to one country. After all, the ideas of nationalism are what brought them to the war in the first place, and they're trying to get past the ideas of the war, or at least react against it. So, when we talk about origins, Dada was an artistic and literary movement that begins in about 1916 in Zurich, Switzerland. And it arises as a reaction to World War I, the nationalism and rationalism which many thought brought the war about. They're influenced by ideas and innovations from several different avant-garde groups. They're going to be influenced by Cubism, Futurism, Constructivism, and Expressionism. Pretty much everything we've looked at so far. Its output is going to be wildly diverse, ranging from performance art to poetry to photography, sculpture, painting, and collage. And Dada's aesthetic, marked by its mockery of materialistic and nationalistic attitudes, proved a powerful influence on artists in many cities. So we see Dada artists working in Berlin, Hanover, Paris, New York, and Cologne, each of which have their own sort of independent group. There's not an overarching hierarchy or anything to this group. The movement is believed to have dissipated with the arrival of Surrealism in France. By 1924, there is no more Dada art. And let's talk about their ideals. Dada's weapon of choice in their war with the establishment was confrontation and provocation. So what they will do, amongst other things, is they will attack traditional artistic values with irrational attitudes and provoke conservative complacency with outrageous statements and actions. So they're going to make you question everything by shocking people, oftentimes by shocking people. They also launch a full-scale assault on the art world, which they saw as part of the system, as part of the society, which led to World War I. They do that a number of different ways. It was considered equally culpable, the art world was considered equally culpable and consequently had to be toppled. Dada questioned the value of all art and whether its existence was simply an indulgence of the bourgeoisie. They do this by, for example, creating ready-mades, pieces that could be made by anyone where the skill is not the question, but rather the artistic choice is the question. And oftentimes making multiples of something. For example, some of the ready-mades where there might be a dozen or 100 made. and all sold as original, which changes the art market, which relies on the idea of an original and then reproductions. The great paradox of Dada is, of course, that they claim to be anti-art. And yet we're sitting here in an art history course talking about Dada. Even their most negative attacks on the establishment result in positive artworks that opened a door to future developments in 20th century art, mostly surrealism. The effect of Dada was to create a climate in which art was alive to the moment and not paralyzed by the traditions and restrictions of established value. In other words, Dada is basically saying, look, we are artists, we can do what we want, and we don't need to follow the quote-unquote art rules, so we're not going to. And this changes art forever because many of the rules that Dada breaks are things that today we take for granted. We sit there and go, yeah, of course you can do that. Of course you can do this as an artist. But at the time, in the 1920s, 19-teens and 1920s, this would have caused riots. In fact, there will be riots at Dada art exhibits.